Good morning, everyone. Welcome to winter and today's webinar, um, which is on winning, it's called Register Now, Winning Registrations Against the Funding Crisis. Um, so a couple of housekeeping notes. First of all, the session will be recorded. Please do use the chat for comments or the Q&A to ask the panel any questions. We do encourage questions because this is for you, and it's richer and much more beneficial if we're answering your direct questions rather than the questions which we think you want the answers to. We have a great panel lined up today who are experts in the field of marketing and will really help contribute to this conversation. I think it's fair to say there's a bit of a death curve of late when it comes to late registrations. And when combined with challenging marketing conditions, some of our events might appear to be a bit in trouble, and sending more emails alone isn't going to fix it. Academic conference budgets are tightening, which means we're all competing for a slice of ever diminishing pot. And in a world of choice, what can we do to make our event the most compelling to attend? What can we do to get delegates to just click the register now button at a time early enough to help us deliver a successful experience for them? So we have, as I said, a panel of three experts who I introduce you to shortly. First of all, we have a couple of polls which we'd like to run just to double check where you are with or the opinions of the people in the room. The first question is: have you noticed a trend to register late in-person events? I've been speaking about this a lot recently. Other people have told me this, but I always like to back it up with some facts. We've got a couple of yeses and a couple of no's there already. The second question is: what marketing channels or approaches are bringing you the most success? It's a multiple choice question, so feel free to select all the ones which are providing a successful channel for you. We'll keep that poll open whilst we are introducing our panel. So first of all, panelist number one, it feels a bit like events blind date, doesn't it? Una O'Reilly from MCO Performance. Some of you will know Una from her time at the ICC Belfast. Una has more than 20 years special experience in driving transformational change and growth, and is formerly a sales leader at both the Irish Football Association and the amazing ICC Belfast. Una is co-founder of MCO Performance, which is a strategy execution consultancy. I've done my vocal warm-ups this morning, thankfully, which launched in February 2024. And Una, you're currently working on, I read the next phase for you is an AI-powered product that enables fee-earning professional services teams to grow and retain their client base. Thank you so much for joining us this
Thanks
morning.
for having me.
You've been involved in sales and marketing for quite a number of years. How has the marketing landscape changed in recent years, and what should event stakeholders be adapting to?
Joe, if I look at it from a sales and marketing, because let's face it, we need the sales, we need people to hit that register button, and we need them to invest their time and their money and actually coming along. I think one of the biggest changes is that our audience has changed. So we now have four generations. We now have to keep people happy. You've got your boomers, your Gen X, your millennials, your Gen Z, and the piece with that is how do you actually make sure that one, the content's relevant, the communications channel is relevant. Like, are you on TikTok? Because let's face it, boomers definitely aren't, however, your Gen Z are. So the channels are really important. And then also looking at your sponsors, how you actually engaging with your sponsors and how you're looking at that as an overall holistic view. So the the key message hasn't. It's buy now, and buy early, and buy often. I think that's what we all want. But definitely in terms of the challenge, the audience themselves has absolutely changed.
It's really interesting, is it? Because as technology advances, what we enjoy and how we interact on a generational level, you said, is very different. And as a it's what's also really interesting. I find myself and how I consume social media, which is much less now. I am definitely generation Facebook, but I'm not. I don't go on anymore because it's changed so much. It's not the way I choose to um, interact with people. And actually, choice is great. We all have choice to interact with whatever we want now, whatever fits us best. But that doesn't make it very difficult for marketers and salespeople to actually reach out and connect with that audience. So thank you, Una. We'll come back to you shortly. Next guest is Jerry Sherwood, who's head of client success at Gleanin. Good morning, Jerry. Thank you for joining us. So after a successful career as an event marketer and event director, with 20 years delivering events in markets from plastic molding and recycling and waste management, goodness me, to civil engineering and packaging. You joined Gleanin, which is a community marketing platform, in 2017. And your role there is to help it grow into a global business. So from your perspective, how is Una already mentioned, different generations and how we interact with them, and how is social media changing how our audiences decide on which events to attend?
Well, I think social media has changed everything, not just how events are marketed now. I think that, and that's for good and for bad. I think that we now live in what we refer to as the trust economy, where we're much more likely to make a purchasing decision based on a friend or a colleague or someone we respect rather than on a brand. And so it's and this I think is exacerbated by the more traditional fields of marketing failing. So email deliverability, email opening rates, those are all going down. So so I think it's becoming much more important, both just as a term, as a means of communication, but because it's that trust that you get through if you can market through people's social media networks. And it was interesting what I heard you say on on the last point about you being generation Facebook. So am I. I'm certainly not generation TikTok, but I do think that when it comes to marketing events, LinkedIn, obviously, I mean, I regard that as a social media platform, but I do think that's one that's just cross-generational now, that you do have all of the different demographic groups going there for information and for connection. And that is becoming, I think, increasingly important in how people choose events as well.
Thanks so much. Great insights there. I agree that I think email deliverability and open rates is difficult, not for a number of reasons, not least because actually there's now less transparency of who is actually opening the emails. So you get no data from anyone who's opening via an Apple product. And furthermore, you now have bots who are scanning emails, and that can also in advance or as companies receive these emails, their servers are previewing these emails, which then reads as an open or even a click through. So it's really difficult, and I think measurement of success, certainly in email campaigns, is becoming more and more opaque. Our final guest, Katrina Breen of Breen Consulting. Welcome, Katrina. Thanks for joining us. You're the founder of Breen Consulting, you work with membership organizations to strengthen their commercial strategies and diversify revenue. You have a background in event management with associations. And it also includes publishing and sponsorship. And you say you bring practical insight into how organizations can adapt and thrive in a changing market. Well, there's nothing more of a changing market than there is now. How are you seeing these trends mirrored in your clients, and what are they doing about it?
Well, to build on what, sorry, first of all, thank you for having me.
That's all right.
To build on what Una and Jerry are saying, I think segmentation is really important right now. And I think if you look at your audience, rather than looking at your audience as a whole of who's attending or who should be attending, it's about segmentation. Yes, very much so, as Una says in terms of generational, but just dicing your segments into smaller niche groups where if you're looking for 1,000 attendees, just 100, 100, 100, 100, and break them down into generational. And then you build your strategy around that. You just got to chip away, I find, with your delegate numbers. So that's from the marketing point of view, but I think you're getting people to register starts a year before. I know that's not helpful for people with events coming up, but you've got to start thinking about why people are actually attending your event. And yes, content is very important, but I think the overarching part right now is connection. We work that people don't get to see each other very often, or most meetings are done online. So if you start positioning your event where you actually get to meet people, or your remote teams actually get to meet together at your event, it starts being not only an industry place to be, but a place that your organization needs to be to actually gather together. So it's constantly changing, but you have to keep ahead of the curve. And I think connection is certainly moving into first position and knocking content into number two.
Which is a bizarre turnaround, because for the last 10 years we've all been repeating content is king, content is king,
Yeah.
content is king. But I think you're right, in a world where we are, as you said, we are all much more separated now than we've ever been. We're connecting much more digitally, which is great in one way, but for one, I miss that hug or the shake of the hand, to meet people and seeing someone in the flesh. And when you meet, I've had my own personal experiences. When I meet someone in person who I've only met online before, it completely changes the dynamic of the relationship. It perhaps for me, I find it softens that relationship, makes it less transactional. And the conversations are I find the conversations are more interesting and perhaps more in depth when we're online. We're always moving quickly. Let's get it done. Let's get the meeting over. We've only got 30 minutes. Meeting in person allows us so much more, and that's why I think it's so important to emphasize that in your messaging of your event too. So just to remind everyone, please do submit your questions for the panel. They're here to answer them. We are going to have a quick look at the results of the poll and ask the panel for their comments. So thank you very much, John. So have you noticed a trend to register later for in-person events? So we've got 21 responses, 19 said yes, 2 said no, which kind of supports the rhetoric that's being spoken about in the industry at the moment. And I think Katrina, as you're working directly with associations, have you seen evidence of this in your clients as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, I mean, in terms of you're looking for tactics, if we want to move quite quickly into that, first of all, yes, that is a trend that is happening across association world and also in the private sector as well. And I think that it's worrying. It's difficult. It's difficult to plan. It's difficult to plan revenue. The landscape is quite a difficult environment to work in. I think things that have really worked for some of my clients is setting kind of fear of loss, which is a sales tactic I appreciate, but it is very much, we have a limited number of places, always goes without saying. But secondly, to apply, you have to apply to register. So you just can't just register and sign on. You actually have to go to a decision making. So it creates a fear, like, oh, I might not get in. Once you do that and then they get in, it's like, oh, I'm in. So that's one of the tactics that I've seen across a couple of clients that I've been working with, and we've had a really strong positive response to that.
I think one of the things which I'm advocating as well, and we're currently trialing with one client, It's the separation of the registration transaction and all the data you want to collect as part of that registration process. So, for example, if we are we're in a situation where we want data, but people's attention spans and more importantly their distractions are growing and growing and growing. If it takes your delegate or your target attendee too long to register because they have to answer too many questions, it's more and more likely that process will get interrupted and then they may never come back to it again.
Correct.
And that does happen, and I know that's happened from my experience. I missed out on an event because I tried to register too many times, but the registration process took too long. So what we're trying to do is learn from airlines now. Actually, let's get the ticket sold.
Yeah.
Let's get that done, and then we're actually experimenting with an event check-in process. So whereby in order to get someone's badge, they have to go through a check-in process, which then gives us dietary requirements, accessibility requirements, plus data, which we want to. I mean, as that's an experiment at the moment, so the jury's out. I'm interested kind of the next poll as well. What marketing channels or approaches are bringing you most success? So we've got email. Email is still the strongest there. Socials, word of mouth equal, and then digital advertising quite low. Although it's nice to see that some people are experimenting with that. I come to Una and then Jerry on this. Any surprises there for you?
No, well, if I go to this first, when I worked at the Northern Ireland Chamber of Commerce, I was the business development director there, and we had a real challenge between getting the numbers to satisfy the sponsor in terms of delegates and then also the fee that we were charging. But one of the tactics that we used was we had applied to win 2 free tickets because we really need to drive up the numbers, and everyone was a winner. So not the best in terms of income from your registrations, but sometimes you have such pressure from sponsors to hit a specific delegate number. Sometimes it's the registration fees not necessarily the most important, and actually getting a really good experience. And I suppose to your point earlier, Katharina, it was how do you actually sell this year? So everyone thinks it was such a good event, so it starts to build up on the year ahead. So it gives you a platform to build on.
And Jerry, any insights from that poll?
I guess I'd be interested to know how this compares to, say, 2 years ago or 4 years ago, because I think that this is where this is shifting at the moment. So we're seeing, I mean, obviously I'm biased about word of mouth, but I think social's word of mouth, that's coming up and email is going down. And I think it's only going to continue that way for the things that we were talking about earlier. I also think there's a question about attribution with a lot of this as well. And I think this is the big challenge that event marketers are facing as well, that it's now becoming so difficult to attribute what is actually leading to a conversion. And so, you're bombarded, you'll go online, you'll get your digital advertising, you might get a post from somebody who's advocating via word of mouth marketing, and then you might go and search for the event on Google, which gets the attribution, or you'll get an email from the organizer and you go, oh yeah, I'm going to go to that because I've seen all this other stuff, and then you click on it there. So there's so many things at play with. So I think that's the big challenge. This, I think it's shifting, and I think it's getting harder to measure which are the most effective anyway.
Thank you very much. We're going to come to some audience questions at the moment, but I want to come back to a point which Katrina made about the importance of connection at an event and how that's becoming perhaps the number one over content. And actually come to you, because you published a report recently on business networking, namely how networking is becoming more and more important. But actually, we're really bad as event organizers. Traditionally, we're really, really bad at networking. We tend to kind of book a room, throw a few glasses of wine in there, and say to delegates there, go and network. But actually, isn't it true that the majority of delegates, that scares the life out of them?
We surveyed it was over 100 people, but 83% of people said that networking was critical to their business. And of senior people, 9 out of 10 were saying that it was fundamental in terms of their own professional and personal success. The challenge being that 21% of people said they completely lacked confidence in networking. They didn't have the skills. And I think COVID and that time away, particularly I suppose for the generation of people that maybe didn't grow up with networking, didn't grow up with the going to events, has had a real negative impact. It's frightening. There's a real piece in terms of I'm going into a room full of strangers, and even if you've met them before, you don't know who's going to be there. It's the unknown. So it's a big piece that we have been looking at actually as a business. We've been running networking boot camps, and a lot about it is what do you do beforehand? That sort of pre-connection. And I think some of what associations are doing with their apps, and their pre-event apps, and starting to like break down those barriers before you go into the room will really help. But yeah, the survey's basically coming out that yes, everybody says networking's the most important thing. But 21% of people, only 21% are actually confident. So you have nearly 80% of people thinking, yeah, I know I should do that, but it's hard whenever you're not sure what to do, and it's frightening.
I wonder, Jerry, how it's possible to, if you're thinking about a referral platform like yours on that basis, how can you express that importance of attendance through things like that? What advice would you give in terms of messaging?
Well, I think that's the kind of thing that you can do when you are encouraging word of mouth advocacy. You can give people messaging that they can share that taps into their reasons for why they want to go to the show. So if it is, I want to network, I'm looking forward to making new friends or new contacts and new business contacts, then you can give them assets to share about that. Or it could be about really looking forward to the latest learning development opportunities, or catching up with my friends, or seeing all the latest products and services. So I think that those are actually the kind of things that you can do that make it more likely that people might share on word of mouth, because they can convey the messages about things that they want to do when they get to the event. But I agree. I mean, I haven't been an organizer for a few years now, but networking has always been the thing. There's partly a British problem here. I think we're just naturally reserved. You go to America and it's incredible. Someone will step out of the aisle into the and put their hand out to shake it. Whereas in Britain, you'll have someone sitting at the back of their stand on a laptop, and the visitors will go by, and when you step off, they'll go, "Oh no, I'm not interested, thanks." So it's much more of a challenge. I've seen some really good stuff on site in the US, just badges that you can collect on your way and that you can attach to your sort of ribbons that you can attach to your badge, with all kinds of different things, from coffee lover to fifth time attendee to all kinds of stuff. And it's just stuff that you see someone else with another ribbon, and it's a really natural way to do it. And I don't think we do nearly enough of that kind of stuff at UK events. I think we need to make networking a bit more fun, and we need to sort of give people avenues in more. But it's not going to stop being a challenge for a while, I don't think.
No, it is hard. Actually, we had on your idea about the ribbons and coffee lover, I was discussing this with someone the other day. Networking needs to be fun, and actually bring something personal in it, a personal interest into it, rather than a work interest, can often be much more beneficial and make it easier. So I'd like a ribbon with swimming and musical theatre on it, please, if I'm at any events. Also, if I ever see anyone on an event, please talk to me about those topics, because they're my two favourite things in the world. Katrina, there's a question I'd like you to ask, actually, from Hannah Scarborough. Thanks, Hannah. We're experiencing late registrations coming in a week before the event. How do you manage this when venues require final numbers 2 weeks before?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and it's a difficult one to answer. And I suppose what I would do in that case, I'd look at trends. So over the past, if this is not a launch event, if you've looked back and you can kind of guess how much to expect in the lead up to previous events. That's what I would probably base my data on, and then get it as good as with your venue. Or most venues are used to this situation, so if you just speak open and honestly about it, I think they can get in a few more at the door. I also generally, it's not good for the budget, but it only hurts a little bit. I always go over to make sure your delegates are covered, and then you can just realign on the morning of the event with your venue. But it's a problem if you're expecting thousands before in the final week. That's a big problem. But I would be surprised if that's what you're finding. I would probably say you will be. I don't know. It depends on your event, really. But I think if you just manage it, expect it, and always go over rather than under, because it'd be a nightmare trying to get more rather than less of
absolutely.
I would hope as well, if I could just add something, I think that push back on the venues a bit, because you might have your trends on your event, but they've got loads of people coming to their event, so they might have some insight onto this. And I think venues should be more helpful generally.
I think I agree with both those points. I'd also advocate really thinking about how people buy from you. Can you separate out your catering ticket? Can you add catering as an added extra to your tickets rather than having it as an inclusive ticket? One, that keeps the cost down for people who want to bring their own sandwiches. Two, it means actually it potentially gives you an argument to say, if you haven't booked your catering ticket by 2 weeks before, you won't be catered for. Obviously, from a duty of care perspective, then you need to make sure that there's somewhere else where they can buy food on the day, so they're not starving. In the larger venues, I know that's a little easier because they've got retail, and there's pros and cons to that. But I would encourage everyone to really think and break down how you are selling your tickets to, and if this is becoming a trend for you, you can also control that as well. If someone's a bit, who I forget who was saying now, but talking about demand, and it was you, Katrina. If you limit demand and say there's only 500 tickets for this event, once they're gone, they're gone. People will not leave it to the last minute, and they'll be disappointed. And once they're disappointed, they won't be disappointed again. Because they'll remember, and they'll get the massive FOMO, which we all want them to have.
And I think when you look at, for example, catering, when you look at your budget lines, and I'm working with a client who does a lot of in-house, do a lot of conferences and awards. When you look at your budget lines and inflation and the costs that are going up, catering, the food and the F&D line has just gone up hugely. So anything you can do to manage that, I think is worth a challenge. Rob, I really like that idea. And I think when it comes to events, I think you don't be afraid to throw things up in the air, because if it doesn't work, well, you just change it. But you've got to try things, and if it's not working, just fail quickly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Having come from a venue background, it's up for negotiation. They're so competitive across the UK. I mean, it would be an interesting conversation to have with a venue to say, we'd love to go with you, but we'd like to do a shared risk on the catering. So we reckon it'll be this, but we'll give you the business from here, and to see if there's any appetite in terms of what you can actually do, because the menu that you could choose could actually be something like, could be a last 1 week out menu. So you're thinking, right, well, actually we can have a little bit more time. If you want to do like an all seated, all dancing type thing, you can say there's only so many tickets for a full buffet. There's so many tickets for our sandwiches. So it starts to segment out your customer base. And then people are saying, people like you, like senior people like you, typically go for, people of your job title typically go for this. So this is what people like you normally go for. So you can maybe encourage the catering and everything to go from there.
It's absolutely true, and thanks for those comments there. I'd like a really important question has just come in, and I have very fixed views on this, but I want to throw out to the panel first. What are the thoughts on early bird rates? Are we just getting people who would register anyway at the standard rate slightly earlier at a reduced rate? And do people really care for a 20% reduction when it's a work card? And it's true, actually early bird rates, in terms of the total cost of attendance an event, the difference between an early bird and a standard or late ticket, if it's only 10-20%, it's insignificant. You're talking about the accommodation costs and travel costs are much more significant. So I'd like each of the panel to comment on this question, please.
I mean, I saw an interview with Mark Ritson the other day. In fact, it was on our event that we run, Activate. He's he's a marketing guru type, who was saying that if you're creating a good enough event, then you shouldn't need early bird pricing. That's an easy thing to say, and it's a brave thing to say. And so I think it's really difficult. You've got to you've got to know your market, and you've got to know your customers. Um, what I would say about early birds are that those are the kind of things that you can tap into with some of that word of mouth marketing. Whereas if somebody's getting early bird rate, then they can share with the network, hey, I just got the early bird rate, because again, that comes into that psychology of sharing, that you're more likely to want to share something that which shows you in a good light. So there are fors and there's against. I can't give you a definitive answer, I'm afraid. They're a really difficult thing to drop if you're panicking about your numbers and you want to get some early birds in, and it comes back obviously to that getting early registrations in as well. Yeah, I'm sorry, I can't give you a better answer on that.
No, I think it's great. It's great, Una.
So my opinion on this is it depends what you're getting for your early bird. So the piece of this here is, have you already sold all your exhibition stands? Have you got all your sponsorship stands? Because if I'm going to a sponsor and I've already got 200 early birds sold, it's a much more compelling proposition. Or if I'm going to exhibitor stands saying, listen, we've already got 20%, 30% sold on this, it's much more compelling. And what we know is the market knows that the vast majority of people book last minute. So if I've already got a substantial amount of people booked in, that gives me real confidence as a sponsor, as a exhibitor. So I can understand the value of having delegates that are already brought in.
And Katrina.
Yeah. What do I think? I think echo what Jerry says, actually. It's a bold move. It's a strong move. And I think that if you're an established event and you're confident in your area, then I think that simplifying any kind of process to build on what you were saying, Rob, earlier, in terms of the registration process, the ticket pricing, it just can get really complicated. Early bird extension, another thing. It just, ticket prices can get overwhelming. So to simplify it, yes, I think it is a brave move. I don't have many examples with certainly my client base I'm working with at the moment who are doing it. But I would love to see some research on it, because as Una's saying, you do get a smaller amount at the beginning and it is mainly last minute, but you do like those early. It's reassuring to yourself, to your sponsors, and also to other delegates to kind of like, I've booked, word of mouth. Bold move. I'd like to see.
In some instances as well, I agree with all those comments. In some instances as well, those early bird rates will help cash flow the event. So if you're running an event as without the support of a national association, for example, independently, or you're hosting an event which has a global rotation, actually the more money you can get in advance, the better. And actually, Jamie Shine has put a comment afterwards. I think people are deadline blind and only feel a sense of urgency to book once the deadline has passed, and it causes a real dilemma when you're desperately trying to meet your minimum numbers. But the work that goes into adding just one more delegate is huge. I don't agree with the idea of a fake deadline to be advertised. But however, I would say, if you're going to have a deadline, stick to it. Deadline extensions are awful for undermining confidence for delegates when they need to book. The same with abstract submission deadlines. And it's been the same for years and years and years. Yeah. Every organization extends their abstract submission deadline. So everyone expects the abstract submission deadline to be extended. So they don't aim to meet the deadline, they aim to meet the planned extension. So by always extending, you're setting that pattern of behavior. And sometimes the only way to change that behavior is be firm and committed in what you're putting out there in terms of deadlines. If there's a deadline, stick to it. And that's why the other thing to think about in early bird rates is that if you want to discount for an early registration, add some value conditions to that. So if people are booking early for a discounted rate, make them commit to that rate. So change the cancellation terms to be more in your favor, or reduce the value of the ticket, or for later registrations, add greater value. Think about experimenting with those sort of things. Isabel says, selling catering add-on something keeps coming up in our committee discussions. Reservations, how to manage this on site and how to ensure the whole conference doesn't disappear at lunchtime, leaving exhibitors unhappy. That's a really, really good point. How to create a lunchtime catering buzz if lots of people are leaving the site for breaks. It is difficult, Isabel, and without experimenting with it, you can't know. But I would say that I would imagine the vast majority of people, for ease, will book your catering, and so long as that catering is co-located with the exhibition, I wouldn't say you need to worry too much about losing that buzz. But by giving people choice, you will always have people that go out. But then you always have people that don't have lunch anyway and go out, because it's free. That's the other thing. If you're including catering in the cost of the ticket, people consider it as free, and so they don't associate the same value with it as if they bought it. So they're more likely to go out, say on day 2 or day 3 on the last day of the conference. They're more likely to go, oh, I don't care too much about the conference food anymore. I'm going to go out to Pizza Express with my mate. But if they've actually bought the lunch from you and paid for that ticket, I would argue they're more unlikely to do that. These are all great questions. Thank you. Keep them coming. Do you have any advice on promotional emails, i.e. the frequency and how much information to include? Katrina, would you like to go with that first?
Yeah, good question. And I'm sorry to say, it depends. So in terms of, I think you can't have them too long. There can't be too much content. People aren't going to read them if they open them, of course. I think it's about A/B testing in terms of content. See what is actually working for your audience. Don't bombard them with too many emails. Depending on when you start your campaign, it really does depend. I generally wouldn't send more than one a month, but your campaign is very much different activity across the channels we spoke about. Send an email, back it up across your socials, your digital advertising. There's plenty of activity that will be happening, but I tend to not send more than one a month with solid A/B testing, so I can iterate and learn throughout the entire process.
So I think it comes down to testing and measuring is what
Yeah.
I'm saying. Jerry, the same to you, but actually on socials. So how often should you be posting about your event? How often should you be asking delegates to reshare that they're attending to?
I think first of all on the emails, it's the law of diminishing returns, isn't it? And I just think so. That and I know from my past as an organizer that if your numbers aren't hitting your targets, like right, who else can we email? And I just think that that's changing, as I mentioned earlier. I think I think it's much more compelling if someone other than you is telling your potential delegates that they should be going to this event. So I think rather than thinking, okay, how many more emails can I send, or how should I be doing? What other things can I be doing? And I think that it's not so obviously getting your registered delegates to let their network know that they're going, but it doesn't just have to be delegates. Your speakers, your exhibitors, your sponsors, your media partners, your ambassadors, for your associations, if you've got your association boards, people who are high profile in the industry, all of them should be doing it, so that it's not just the brand who are just hammering people with emails all the time. It's everyone talking about it, and it's creating that all-round noise. So in terms of frequency, I mean, again, it will be the law of diminishing returns. And in an ideal world, you would ask all of your speakers to promote once and then they go and do it. The reality is that some of them will ignore you the first time, some of them will do it. But I think getting everybody, if you could try and get everybody to do every one of your stakeholders to do one thing once, that would be better than getting everybody to just try and do as many things as they can.
All right, thank you very much. There's one more question on neurodiversity and quiet space events. I'm actually going to suggest you take a look at my LinkedIn profile, because I posted something on Monday on that topic, and I don't think it's quite relevant for our experts for today, but there is a conversation on there which I think will be enlightening to you, and also there's a resource on there that I've signposted to in the comments. We're starting to wrap up now. I'm going to come back to the panel for their final thoughts in just a moment, but a few things coming up which I'd like you to be aware of as a group. If I could have the slides, please, John. For those who are new, you are attending an event which is part of the Evolve community. This is a community for in-house association event professionals. That's those who work directly for membership organizations. Next year, we'll be running 16 events, of which 12 webinars, 2 live events, 2 live meetings, and 2 socials, with future options of online engagement, a PIN, mentorship programs, jobs, to bring around a greater sense of community and connection with those who work directly for associations. We recognize it can be a really isolating role sometimes. Next slide, please, John. We have our next webinar. We're having a Christmas special, and I promise I will be wearing my Christmas jumper on the 18th of December, talking about creating better social events at conferences. And Adam Fillery, who is at the top of my attendee list here on the right, is one of our guest panelists at that event. 30th of January, is the big one. That's Evolve Live at Excel London. That's a day of interaction, connection, and education for you, for your community. If you register by 31st December, you save £50. And if you check your emails tomorrow, I'll be sending out a further discount code which can save you another £50 if you register by the end of November. We'll send out the link to that program, or you can have a look at the program. It's now live on the evolvecommunity.org/event. The QR code is on the right of the slide there. That's going to be a fantastic day. It's the second one we've run, and we had such great feedback from the first one, and so many people met so many else who helped them solve their problems. And the final slide, please, John. Thank you. And finally, we are Brighthelm. We're the event agency for associations. You can find us out more about us on our website. And on the right-hand side is a QR code to the event page, which will link to our speakers' resources there, or their LinkedIn profile. So I would encourage you to click on that too. We've got time now to come back to our panel for one last kind of short thought. I'd like to ask you, actually, if there's one thing that our event lead should focus on in marketing, what is it? I'll come to Una first.
It depends if I'm to steal what Catherine has said. I suppose the piece is to really concentrate in terms of your key message and your audience, and have a full campaign. So not doing it piecemeal. So actually work back from when you need everything and just have a planned approach, and then test it as you go along, and don't be afraid to change.
Thank you very much. Jerry?
I think you'd probably know what I'm going to say, but yeah, leverage your event community. So we live in the trust economy, so you're going to get much more traction by getting your community talking about your event than you are talking about it yourself. So anything you can do to do that, and that can include tech, but anything you can do to do that, then yeah, I think that's the best way to go.
Any suggestions for a platform that can help you with that?
There's something called Gleanin that you should definitely check out.
Okay, check out Gleanin, everyone. And Katrina?
Yes, I totally agree with what Una and Jerry have been saying, but also think about next year, this year. So think about what you're creating within the event to make it an event that people actually really want to come to, and connection is key.
Thank you so much. So thank you to our panel. Thank you to Una, Jerry and Katrina. Please, wherever you are, give them a round of applause from home. Thanks also to John Richards, our event manager, who's there sitting in the background supporting us. Izzy Allen, our marketing coordinator, who's done a fantastic job of bringing the audience to us today. And thank you also, our audience, for attending, and the great questions you've asked today. A quick note, you will receive a request for a survey after the event finishes. Please ignore that. Due to a technical issue, it's the wrong survey on Zoom, and I couldn't figure out how to delete it. So please ignore the survey when it comes up. We will send you a separate survey in the wrap-up email tomorrow. And please do give your feedback. We can only improve with the value. We can only improve from the feedback you give us. Thank you very much. I've been Rob Everly. I appreciate you attending and giving your time to us today. See you in December or at Evolve Live on the 30th of January. Bye for now.